Hey guys, in this next video we're going to continue graphing exponential functions, but in this video the equations we see are going to be just a little bit more complex than the equations you saw in your 7.5 day 1 video, and the equations are going to be in this format specifically. Okay, instead of just being y equals a times b to the x power, they're going to be y equals a times b to the x minus h power plus k. So you're going to have a little bit extra there in your equations. And all that really means is you're just going to change the way you set up your t-charts. So in the first video and on your first homework assignment, all of the x values you plugged into your tables were -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2. And so in this video, what we're going to do is we're just going to change that based on what this value up here in your exponent is. Okay, so what we call the h value is just going to be the center point of our t-chart. Okay, so when you set up your t-chart for each of your graphs, again, you're going to have an x column and a y column. You're going to choose your h value to be the center point of your t-chart. And then your other four values, you're going to base on that h value. So two of those values will be values that are 1 larger and 2 larger than h. And the other two values will be values that are 1 smaller and 2 smaller than h. Okay, so that's what that value up there does. The second value you're going to see added to your equations is this k value here at the end. And what the k value tells you is it tells you where your horizontal asymptote is. If you remember in the last video, we made our horizontal asymptotes on the x-axis, and the x-axis is also the line y equals 0. Well, that's because for all of our equations, we didn't have anything added to the end, so our k value was really in disguise a +0. Okay, in today's video, we're going to have something extra on the end of those equations, and so you're just going to move your asymptote either up or down based on what that is, and so your asymptote is always going to be the line y equals k. So let's go down to example 1, and let me show you what that means here with an actual example. So in this one, we have the equation y equals 3 to the x plus 2 power. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to notice is that my k value in this is just like it was in the last video. I have a +0, an invisible +0, there on the end of my equation. And so that means that I have a horizontal asymptote at y equals 0. Okay, so that's the first thing I'm going to draw into my graph. I'm going to draw the imaginary horizontal line y equals 0, which again is going to be just on the x-axis. Okay, and that's just going to be sort of like a boundary line for my graph. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set up my t-chart. So my x values over here, I'll leave some room in the middle for my work, and then my y values over here. But instead of choosing -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2, I'm going to choose values based on this number up here. Okay? We're going to take the opposite sign of what we see up here. Since we see an x plus 2 up in my exponent, I'm going to choose -2 to be my middle value of my t-chart. Okay? Because this means that k is equal to -2. So -2 is going to be the middle value of my t-chart. I am then going to choose two values that are larger than this k value. That would be -1 and 0. And two that are smaller than it. That would be -3 and -4. And those are the five values that I'm going to plug into my equation up here. Okay, so we have 3 to the x plus 2 power. So each time I'm going to be taking 3 to this number plus 2, that power. So let me go ahead and set that up. Okay, so for our first exponent, we have -4. We're plugging in for x. So this is going to give us 3 to the -4 plus 2 power, which would be 3 to the -2 power, which would give us 1/9. Then we're going to take 3 to the -3 plus 2 power. That gives me 3 to the -1 power, or 1/3. Then we have 3 to the -2 plus 2 power, which is 3 to the 0, which is just 1. Then we have 3 to the -1 plus 2 power, which would be 3 to the +1 power, or 3. And finally, we have 3 to the 0 plus 2 power, which would be 3 squared, which gives us 9. Okay, so these are going to be the 5 points that I plot. -4 1/9. 1/9 is a little bit too small for me to really get a good fit on here, so I'm going to go ahead and skip to -3 1/3 and plot that point. So that would be about right here. Then I'll plot -2 1, -1 3, and finally 0 9. Okay, and so the shape of the graph I'm getting, it looks like I'm getting positive growth for this graph right here, which makes sense because our A value was +1, okay, this hidden value out here, and then our B value is greater than 1. Our B value is 3, and so we should be getting positive growth. Okay, for number 2, I have the equation y equals -2 times 1/2 to the x minus 3 power plus 4. Okay, let's go ahead and think about our behavior first of all. So our A value is negative here, okay, the -2. So A is less than 0, which means we're going to have negative behavior. And our B value is less than 1, which means I'm going to have decay. So this is going to be negative decay here, and negative decay, again, looks like this. This is going to be your shape for negative decay. So that's what my graph should look like. The next thing I'm going to do is determine what my K value is. K, again, is this number right here, and that's going to tell me where my horizontal asymptote is. So I know my horizontal asymptote is the line y equals 4. Okay, so I'm going to go over to my graph. I'm going to draw my horizontal asymptote in. So this time my boundary line is going to be up here instead of being at the x-axis. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up my t-chart, and again I'm going to pick values based on what my h value is. Okay, so my h value again is going to be opposite of this sign up here. So since I see a -3 up there in my exponent, that means my h value is going to be a +3. So when I set up my t-chart, I'm going to use +3 as my middle value. I'm going to choose a 4 and a 5 and a 1 and a 2 as my other values. And again, I'm plugging into this expression -2 times 1/2 to the power x minus 3 plus 4. And so I'll go ahead and set this up. You're going to want to leave yourself a little bit of room for work up here. Okay, so the first number I'm plugging in is going to be +1. So it's really important that you do your order of operations when you're doing this. We're going to do our exponents first. So this is going to give us -2 times 1/2 to the -2 power plus 4. Well, 1/2 to the -2 power is going to be the same thing as 2 squared, which is 4. So you get -2 times 4 plus 4, which gives you -8 plus 4, which is -4. Okay, next we're going to plug in +2 up here, and so we'll do -2 to the 1/2 times 1/2 to the -1 power plus 4. 1/2 to the -1 is going to be the same as 2 to the +1 power, so that would be 2. So we get -2 times 2 plus 4, which is -4 plus 4, which is 0. Okay, next we have a 3 we're plugging in, so we have -2 times 1/2 to the 0 power plus 4. 1/2 to the 0 is 1, so we have -2 times 1 plus 4, which is -2 plus 4, which is +2. And then we plug in 4. So you'll get -2 times 1/2 to the first, that would just be 1/2, plus 4. That would be -2, so that would become -1 plus 4, which would give us +3. And then finally plugging in a 5, we get -2 times 1/2 squared plus 4. That's going to give us -2 times 1/4 plus 4, which is going to be negative 1/2 plus 4, or 3.5. Okay, so it takes a little bit of work, and be sure you understand how I got each of those numbers, especially up here with my negative exponents. Okay, but those are the 5 points you should get, and now I'm going to plot each of those points on my coordinate plane up here. Starting out with 1, negative 4, then 2, 0, 3, 2, 4, 3, and then 5, 3.5. Okay, and again, we want to check to make sure our graph gives us the same shape as we expected. We do get a negative decay shape for this one, and so that looks like we got an accurate graph. Okay, looking at number 3, let's first of all talk about the horizontal asymptote for this one. So this one, your k value is at negative 3, so that means I have a horizontal asymptote at the line y equals negative 3. So that's going to be right down here. Okay. Next thing I'm going to look at is the shape of my graph, and so I have an a value that's positive, a b value that's less than 1. That means I'm going to have positive decay for this graph here. Positive decay again looks like this. Your graph's going to be above your asymptote, but your y values are getting smaller, they're decaying. And so now let's take a look for how we would set up our t-chart. So our h value for this one is positive 4, or h value is going to be the opposite of positive 4, so that's going to be a negative 4 that we'll use. So that means the middle value of my t-chart is going to be negative 4. That means I'm going to pick negative 6, negative 5, negative 3, and negative 2 as my 5x values. And again, we'll plug them into that expression there. Okay, so the first thing I want to plug in, again, is a negative 6 for x. And so that's going to look like this. So we're going to do 2 times 1/4 to the negative 2 power minus 3. That's going to give us 1/4 to the negative 2 would be 4 squared, so 2 times 4 squared minus 3. That would be 2 times 16 minus 3, which gives us 32 minus 3, or 29. Okay, next I'll go ahead and do negative 5. So my exponent is going to become a negative 1, so 2 times 1/4 to the negative 1 minus 3. That would be the same as 2 times 4 to the first minus 3, which would be 2 times 4 minus 3. 2 times 4 is 8, so you get 8 minus 3, or 5. What I'd like you to do right now is go ahead and pause the video, try the last 3 x values, see if you can get their corresponding y values, and then once you're done with that, click play to check your answers to these remaining 3 y values, please. Okay, for your remaining 3 y values, you should have gotten negative 1, negative 2 1/2, and negative 2 7/8. So when I go to plot my points, I'm not going to plot negative 629, because 29 goes way off my graph. I am going to plot, though, negative 5, 5, which is right there, negative 4, negative 1, negative 3, 2 1/2, and then negative 2 7/8 would be right about there. Okay, so this graph is going to look like this. And as you can see, we do get our expected shape of positive decay for this one. Okay, lastly, for number 4, what I'd like you to do is go ahead and pause the video, and I just want you to draw your horizontal asymptote for this one, and then set up your t-chart, and then once you're done doing those 2 things, go ahead and click play just to check how you're doing so far. So again, just draw your horizontal asymptote and set up your t-chart for me. Okay, so this is what you should have so far. Our k value is positive 5, so that means we have a horizontal asymptote up here at y equals 5. The shape of our graph is going to be negative growth, since a is negative and b is greater than 1, so the shape is going to look like this here. And then your h value is positive 6, and so you're going to choose x values of 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to plug each of those h values in. Okay, and what I want you to do is try this on your own, see if you can get the correct 5 y values I get. So go ahead and hit pause, do that, and once you get those 5 y values, hit play to check your answer before you graph. Okay, so go ahead and check your y values for me, see if you got the same things that I got. So 4 and 31/32 is what I got. Okay, very, very close to 5. And then as you go down, 4 and 7/8, 4 and 1/2, 3, and then -3. So now let's go ahead and plot each of those values, see if we get the shape we were supposed to get. So 4 and 31/32 is close, pretty close to 4 or 5. I'm going to go ahead and just plot this point right here, 4, and then almost 5, so about right there. Then we have 5, 4 and 7/8, which is going to be just about there. Okay, then next we have 6, 4 1/2. 7, 3. And then 8, -3. Okay, so we get this as our graph, which again is giving us the shape that we expected of negative growth. Okay, if there's anything in this video that you need to rewatch, feel free to do that. And until I see you next time, have a nice day. You're all wonderful people. Take care.